Hello, this is Professor Gibson, and this is a video on Chapter 11, Section 4 for Math 115. The title of the section is Measures of Variation. Variation means how different are the data values for each other, aka how spread out is the data. Okay, so let's give you an example here. Look at this slide here. We've got Company A and Company B. These two companies actually have the same average salary. But if you look and see, this is a histogram, so the frequency tells you, so the higher the bar, the more common a salary is. Company A, their salaries are really in a tight little salary range here, right? They're all right close to each other. Company B is much more spread out in terms of different levels of salary, right? So that's the variation. Company B has much more variation, they have a much higher spread. Okay? Now, our book has two different measures of spread or variation that we're going to talk about. The first one is range, and it's simply the maximum value in the data set minus the minimum, right? High minus low. And the second one is standard deviation, and it's the average distance from a data value to the mean. This is really a lot more information on the range when you just have high minus low like this or max minus min. Sometimes one or two data values or few of them can be way out from the others. And so the range really just tells you the distance between the ones on the edges. It doesn't tell you anything about how packed together or not packed together most of the points in the middle are, right? Whereas the standard deviation actually gives you the average distance of a data value from the mean, right? So how far is it on average from a data value in this set to the mean? That's the standard deviation, and that's the one that tells you it nicely. Now, here's our formulas. Most of the questions in this section, that's standard homework, and this is kind of an odd section because most of the questions in the question bank were just variations on the same thing. But anyway, most of them ask you for the range, which we've already talked about. They ask you for the variance, which is this formula right here, sample variance, and they ask you for the standard deviation, which is this one here also. Now, the variance is not really used very often. It's just kind of something you find on the way to get the standard deviation. The standard deviation is the square root of the variance, all right? So if you look at this thing, if you were going to compute this manually, here's the formula here, and here's what you do. First, you'd find the mean. Then you subtract the mean from each data value in the data set, okay? You've got these differences. These are actually called the deviations. Then you square each of these differences or deviations. So if you had 10 data values at this point, you'd have 10 separate numbers. You'd have each of those 10 numbers minus the mean, and then you would have squared that. So you got 10 separate results from that. Add them all up, right? Add up all 10 of those squares, then divide by n minus 1. Now, that's the variance. Last step, take the square root of that. That's the standard deviation. So manually, it takes a while, especially if you've got many data values, it can take quite a while. Fortunately, we're not actually going to do it manually. You can do this in Excel. Here's the formula. I'll come back to that in a minute. Most scientific and all graphing calculators also have built-in functions to calculate the standard deviation of a data set, or a set of data, right? Be sure to calculate the standard deviation of a sample, right? Get the sample one, and not the one of the population. The formulas are slightly different. So I'm not going to show you how to do it on the calculator only because different calculators tend to have different buttons and things. There's just too many different possibilities for me to reasonably teach you. However, you take your calculator and you look at the name on the front of it, like it says TI-83 or Casio FX whatever, or it says TI-30XS2, whatever it says is the model number. Go to Google, type in how to find standard deviation of a sample with, and type in your model number. It'll almost certainly find it. Most of the manufacturers make it easy to find them, and even if for some reason that one wasn't, there's almost certainly some high school math teacher or college math professor that posts some little blurb about how to do it with that calculator. All right, so use Google to find the instructions for your calculator, or I really do recommend Excel. It's quite, even if you don't like Excel, hang with me. Give me a chance on this one. I think you'll find it's very straightforward. We're not going to get into a bunch of complexities with Excel. We're going to copy paste something in, and we're going to type in one command. That's pretty much it. All right. So we got to, let's work out a couple examples. I'll show you from Connect Math. Okay, so here's the first one. And you see it gives us some numbers. And it says find the range, variance, and standard deviation. Really, this is the standard question. This is what I meant by this section's kind of odd. Most of the questions in the test bank are just this. Set of numbers, find the range, variance, and standard deviation. So I've given you a few of them to do. Mainly the extras are in case some people try to do it by formula. That would take some practice to get down. Now, so the first one here, part one, is find the range. And remember, the range is just the max minus the min, right? So it looks like the max is 221. I see a 59. 59 is the smallest and the 221 is the biggest. So 221 minus 59 is going to be the range. I'm going to put that into the calculator here. 162. Okay. Now, to do the variance and then the standard deviation, it's much easier in Excel. So I'm just going to left click on the link here where it says send data to Excel. I like to put mine goes into downloads automatically. This is Chrome, so if you have Firefox or something, your download might operate a little differently, but that's pretty much it. There's the data, right? So we have two commands here. Actually, I realized I just put the let me blow the view up here so you can see this a little bit better. One for the variance, right? So the command for the variance, when we want the variance, we're doing everything of the sample. So you type equals var dot s, and then type an open parenthesis, right? So you can see that. You pause the video if you want to write that down. Come over here, highlight your numbers. Close the parenthesis, hit enter. Done, there's the variance, right? So I'm just going to abbreviate standard deviation SD. We want the standard deviation. Type in equals stdev dot s, open parenthesis. Come over here, highlight the data values, close parenthesis, enter. Done. Those are the answers, right? So we just got to come back over here. It wants this round the variance to one decimal place and the standard deviation to 2. So the variance to 1, 3080.9. And then the standard deviation to 2, 55.51. Got it. Now, let's look at number 7. There's one or two of these where they ask a question and they don't give you the button to copy the data over. So you can just type them in. It works quite quickly. That's probably what I would do for these is just type them in like 3, 5, 9, 13, 17, 21, 23. So 3, enter, 5, enter, 9, enter, 13, enter, 17, enter, 21 and 23, yep, 21, enter, 23. And they're just going to do the same thing, right? Oh, I forgot to do the, actually, I don't think this one asks for the range. They're just going to ask you to compare the variations, okay? So when they ask you this, what you're going to want to do is take the standard deviation, right? We'll just take all 3 standard deviations and compare them. The bigger standard deviation has a bigger variance. The smaller standard deviation has a smaller variance. All right. And again, just because we did 4, like so, if we want the standard deviation, right? I want the standard deviation. Type for the command. Type equals to start the command. stdev dot s. So that stands for standard deviation dot sample. stdev dot s. Type the open parenthesis. Highlight the data. Close parenthesis. There it is. All right, and for this one, we do that for the other 2, and then essentially just compare the numbers to answer the question. Well, not essential, that's exactly what you do. Okay, that is all I have for this one. I hope you found that helpful. If you're trying to do this on your calculator and you've tried the Google thing and you can't find it, feel free to send me an email, send me the name of your calculator. I'll see what I can do. There's probably a lot of different calculators though, so I really would prefer that you try to find it first yourself but I'll be glad to help if you can't find it. All right. Okay, gang, that's it for this one, and that finishes the videos for this week.